is an absolute shambles. It's been going on now for 9 months. I was just counting the months since the revelations about secret payments, extraordinarily large secret payments to Ryan Tubridy on top of an obscene salary that he received, and indeed many other top presenters received, and lots of executives receiving obscene salaries. And there was outrage, there were hearings, there were questioning, there was going to be reform, this was going to be got a grip on, and here we are 9 months later, and the issue which outraged the public remains with us. Top executives who presided over a shambles walking away with enormous golden handshakes. Figures on top of salaries that they'd received, which most ordinary workers could never dream of. That's what is outraging people. And, you know, I contrast the golden handshakes being received by these executives with, for example, the Debenhams workers, who gave 25, sometimes up to 40 years service to a company who just up and left them with nothing, and the government said, we can do nothing about it. No money available for them to compensate them for being screwed to the wall by a company to whom they had been loyal for 20 or 30 years, but we don't know who signed off on the big payouts to the top executives in RTE in the aftermath of a scandal about secret payments, barter accounts on top of obscene salaries. It's a shocking failure to get to grips. So I am less concerned, frankly, about the who knew what when, and more concerned with the failure of the government to get on top of this 9 months afterwards, and where the same issues that were at the heart of the public outrage and the scandal persist. Non-disclosure agreements about big payouts to people who presided over malgovernance and a financial debacle. We don't still know. Nobody seems to know. To me, that is shocking. Now, there's something elementary as far as I'm concerned. It's a public service broadcaster. In the public service, for the most part, you know what the salary grades are. You know what politicians get paid, you know what civil servants get paid. It's publicly available information. But in a publicly funded national broadcaster, we have non-disclosure agreements, big exit payments, and we haven't got on top, we don't have the information, and we don't know, there's still rows about who knew what when about the decision to sign off on these payments. To me, that is absolutely shambolic, and it's indicative of the way in which state-funded bodies, agencies, semi-states, and so on can operate at arm's length, that's the phrase that's been used, at arm's length from ministerial and governmental responsibility. And to me, that is the issue that has got to be addressed. And to my mind, the really unfortunate thing about all this is that the people who are actually going to suffer at the end of the day, who are suffering, are the ordinary workers in RTE who could never dream of these salaries that these top executives were getting, will certainly not be getting these big exit payments, but whose jobs, hundreds of their jobs, facing suppression. The exact thing that shouldn't have happened is almost certainly going to happen. Hundreds of decent jobs, not super well-paid jobs, but of ordinary workers, to be suppressed. And the quality of public service broadcasting, to my mind, inevitably will be degraded as a result of that. Because it is precisely the jobs that actually make the place work, rather than the top executives, that will be suppressed and outsourced. Compounding the situation of bogus self-employment and outsourcing of what used to be decent jobs to the private sector. That is the net result, and that will degrade the quality of public service. And the hiatus that has been created is governmental responsibility in not getting to grips with the funding model and the reform, and that we're still waiting for reports in March, and the government haven't made any decisions about the key issues that lie at the heart of this. How are we going to protect, support, finance public service broadcasting, but reform its governance to make sure these outrageous salaries, these outrageous exit payments end, and that things become transparent and properly governed, and the people who make decisions are properly held responsible. I mean, I sort of wonder, did the government want this thing to roll on because it has been a convenient punching bag? For once, the government weren't the ones under the cosh. There was a certain joy and satisfaction in the government could point the finger at people who weren't politicians and blame them. Not to say that they weren't without fault, but the tragedy of it is the people who end up really paying are the ordinary workers who genuinely weren't at fault. The taxpayer and the TV licence payer who should and have the right to expect decent, properly funded, high-quality public service broadcasting. So I singularly hold the government responsible for failing to get on top of this. And I would just add, as a last word, Minister, I personally believe that this potentially is the tip of a very big iceberg, as I've said. Because the other area, as the Minister knows, that I'm concerned with, which is also in the audio-visual area, and indeed where there's a very, very big overlap between RTE and the Irish audiovisual sector, particularly the Irish film sector. Many of the people cross over and have crossed over from one to the other, also receive huge amounts of public money. Huge amounts of public money. And in my mind, there is not proper oversight and governance of how that money is spent and whether the state is getting back for it what it was supposed to get in terms of the quality employment and training. And I acknowledge that you held the forum recently, Minister. I attended the forum, but it was very interesting at that forum. The same thing you're hearing from the ordinary RTE workers about how their jobs are jeopardised, how they are suffering the consequences of the decisions made at the top by top executives and so on. We heard much the same from a quite wide variety of people at that film industry saying about the precarious situation they were in terms of employment, and they wonder, how does all this public money go in, and yet many of us have a completely precarious existence? Again, a small number of people at the top, the major beneficiaries of huge amounts of public money, but a government that seems to keep it all at an arm's length and never properly look into, is the public getting back, because it's public money, getting back what it's supposed to get for this large public investment, and are the workers in these industries, whether it's RTE, whether it's the film sector, are they getting the decent quality, the secure quality employment that they deserve? But signs on it, it's the workers who are going to pay, and it is the quality of public service broadcasting that is going to be degraded, and precisely it'll be areas, I bet you, it'll be areas like arts, culture and music. They'll pay, because they'll have to keep the news, they'll have to keep the current affairs, right? It'll be the other stuff that will be suppressed and outsourced and privatised, adding to the precarity again of people who work in the arts and cultural sector. So I hold the government responsible for this collectively, and it's really shambolic that after 9 months we're still facing the same issues.
Thank you very much, Deputy.